Kirk is anything other than one of them.
Within hours, he was suspended. The left call it censorship. The right call it justice. But here's the real question. When armed police can arrest a comedian and American TV royalty can be yanked off air, is anyone safe? Is it cancel culture or is it consequence culture? Tonight, we're putting that on trial. First up, we're going to hear from John Levine. John, Jimmy Kimmel, American TV royalty. Yes, he made a few jokes about Donald Trump. Yes, he pushes it the line a little bit, but he got it wrong on Charlie Kirk's murderer. He said they were a MAGA person. Surely he's been suspended for mistruths rather than censored for his sense of humour.
Well, he definitely, Harry, it's great to be here.
Lovely to see you.
He definitely did get it wrong. Obviously, he was not a MAGA guy. He was a far-left progressive, and I'm sure the more we learn about him, the more it's going to come out that he was indoctrinated, into a lot of these very hateful ideologies you see on the far left. But at the same time, I don't know that Jimmy Kimmel said something that was factually inaccurate. Now the whole show is gone. I mean, that's a very, I've made errors in my life too, and I'm sure you have, and I don't know that it should mean your whole show gets canceled. I think maybe like a fine, maybe an apology, but yeah. We move on. And I go back to something Charlie Kirk always stood for, which is free expression. And I hesitate to put words in his mouth, but I have a hard time believing that he would want Jimmy Kimmel yanked off the air for the comments he made.
I remember Jimmy Kimmel, gloating when various conservatives were cancelled, famously Tucker Carlson. Yeah. He did a whole skit on it. Isn't he just, getting a taste of his own medicine here?
Oh, Harry, you're making me defend this man, and you're completely right. He is a giant hypocrite, and he was wrong to make fun of Tucker, and he was wrong for many of the things. And I don't confuse what I don't feel bad for him. I don't know. I don't mourn his loss on television. I'm just saying I don't know that conservatives want to go down the road of you said something we don't like. You said something even factually inaccurate that we don't like. So now we have to cancel your show. Because, you're already seeing like, oh, you best clerk at Best Buy. You said, or Walmart, you said something that was hurtful and objectionable. You have to get fired. And I don't want to see conservatives embrace a lot of the tactics that we rightly decried liberals for. There's
been a big backlash at what Pam Bondi, the Attorney General in the States, said the other day, where she essentially said, we're going to go down the British route of starting to criminally police hate speech. There was a big backlash from the American right, broadly, Charlie Kirk's own supporters on that one, saying, hold on, this is not what we stand for. What's the latest with that? Put us in.
Well, that's not happening. I mean, she obviously clearly misspoke. I mean, I know, the right fought the hate speech wars for many, many years in America. And it's part of the reason we were able to get Donald Trump elected. If we had hate speech laws like we have in your country, unfortunately, they would have put President Trump in jail for any number of hundreds of tweets he put up over the years. And I remember it was like, the bakery didn't want to bake the cake.
Yeah,
didn't want to bake the. If you had that in London, you might have been arrested.
Well, Pam Bondi's saying that printers have to print pro Charlie Kirk posters even if they didn't want to.
That is obviously crazy, and I think people should print those posters. But obviously, if you don't want to print them, in the same way, if you don't want to make the gay cake, it's your right. It's your thing. And the right fought for many, many years to preserve the right of people to make those judgments for themselves. So I don't know why Pam Bondi said that. I think she obviously misspoke. I don't think we need to have like a dramatic walk back about it. We just never need to bring it
up. Quietly make it all go.
Quietly, let's just shelve that.
John, stay there. Let's hear what Pam Bondi's own boss had to say on the subject when he was quizzed about it.
Well, Jimmy Kimmel was fired because he had bad ratings more than anything else, and he said a horrible thing about a great gentleman known as Charlie Kirk. And Jimmy Kimmel is not a talented person. He had very bad ratings, and they should have fired him a long time ago. So, you can call that free speech or not. He was fired for lack of talent.
There is nothing worse in the eyes of Donald Trump, I think, than bad ratings. So I mean, he's reserved his biggest insult there. But isn't this sort of market forces rather than cancellation? That, people are tuning out of these late night shows, and maybe Jimmy Kimmel's bosses have seen an excuse to correct what their coverage over the years, and B, save a few bob here.
I think you're right. I think this fundamentally was about ratings. I remember when they canned Megyn Kelly a long time ago when she had a daytime show, and that was also really about ratings, and they made up a bunch of fake reasons for it. But in this case, I really wish that conservatives didn't allow ABC to have the excuse of, we're doing this because of Charlie Kirk. Make them own that this was really about ratings. I would much rather have had it gone down that way, because now, as you know, because you've been around, the media narrative is going to be, President Trump wanted them off the air. And you even have the head of the FCC in our country threatening ABC. We can do this the easy way or the hard way. Brandon Carr said that. They were actively putting pressure on ABC to take this show off the air when, as you point out, as President Trump pointed out, you could have done this just with ratings if you just let it go on the ratings side.
Why is it, though, that you see the American left, from where I'm sitting, seem more animated about the sacking of one of their own than the brutal murder of a conservative? I mean, what world are we living in?
Completely psychotic. I mean, of course they're going. There was a horrifying poll I saw, YouGov poll. 38% of the American left believe that political violence could be justified. And we've been sort of gaslit for many, many years about how, I know this looks bad, but most of the violence comes from the right. We need to remember that the studies show that most of the violence comes from the right. And it's like, it comes from the University of, and it doesn't matter. And they just use this as a token whenever there's an incident that makes the left look bad. But the fact of the matter is, it's become very apparent over the years that most political violence comes from the left. We've seen the attempted assassination of President Trump. We've seen just how casually violent they are, even when no one's breaking the law, like on some of these college campuses. President Trump was at Joe's Stone Crab, a great restaurant in D.C. We'll have to go sometime, Harry. And they got so close to him, the protesters. They were 2 or 3 feet away from him the day before Charlie was assassinated. Yeah. And I was so angry because I was like, how is this allowed in 2025 after all we've been through? They can get that close to the President of the United States.
It feels to me that the reaction to the death of horrible, evil death of Charlie Kirk has woken up something in the American right that weirdly didn't happen last year when President Trump was 2 assassination attempts on him. Obviously, he's a famous, articulate voice of a generation has been cruelly taken away from us. But has the world been too late to wake up to the realities of quite what is happening in terms of that violence you discuss?
Look, I think the hour is very, very late. And I think even with 2 attempted assassination attempts on President Trump, which thankfully were not successful, so we were able to kind of move on. But now we have had a successful assassination against a very prominent person who was not spreading a message of hate. If you listen to any of Charlie's stuff, it's all, I want to talk to everybody. Yeah. I want everyone to express their views. He always was against political violence. I mean, the left hated him because he was winning the war of ideas and the marketplace of ideas, and they couldn't beat him there. So they assassinated him in this extrajudicial, illiberal way. And because they couldn't beat him in the marketplace of ideas, which is the fundamentals of our country and should be your country. So I think the right has woken up, that the hour is very, very late. And you've heard President Trump start talking about dismantling the networks of nonprofits that are responsible for indoctrinating these people and paying the salaries of their leaders and creating a culture of hate and violence and normalizing a culture of hate and violence. And this network, Soros, Ford Foundation, IDES Foundation, a lot of these groups, in many cases, they're funded by foreign actors, like people like Neville Roy Singham, who lives in Shanghai. Yeah. And he funds Code Pink. They're the screechy old ladies who are always protesting.
I've seen them in D.C., yeah.
They're being funded by like a pro-China outfit, and they're fundamentally antithetical to everything our country stands for. So this network of nonprofits and NGOs has to go. That's got to go.
John Levine, couldn't have put it better myself. Thanks for joining us. Washington Free Beacons, John Levine there. Thank you for coming on. Harry Cole Saves the West. I'm joined now by Jack Posobiec, Senior Editor at Human Events. Evening, Jack. Look, before we start, we were meant to speak exactly a week ago. Can you tell us what happened?
Well, Harry, thanks for having me back on. And of course, it was, originally we were supposed to be here a week ago, and I was all set to be there with you in person in Washington, D.C. I'm actually in Phoenix, Arizona right now in the Turning Point USA headquarters, their studios. And it was right as I'd finished my show on Human Events Daily that I got the news. Well, during the show, we'd gotten the news that Charlie had been shot. And right after the show, give or take, was when I got the news that Charlie had been killed. And that just set forward a series of events that brought me here to Phoenix. And I have not left Phoenix since that took place. Now we are in a position where, of course, we're gearing up for this huge memorial that's going to take place on Sunday. But it's been it's been an indescribable.
No, I'm very sorry for your loss. I know you were a dear friend of Charlie's. The debate about free speech, I know it's way too soon to be talking about lasting legacies, but the debate about free speech has exploded in the last 7 days. Finally, people are talking about issues that Charlie's been trying to put on the agenda for the better part of a decade. Are you concerned, however, that there perhaps is now an overcorrection by elements like Jimmy Kimmel's bosses, Pam Bondi suggesting that, words should be criminally sanctioned? That isn't, for me, I don't think, and you know him far better than I ever did, but that isn't, I can imagine what Charlie would be campaigning for had he not been so cruelly taken from us.
Well, that's right. Yeah, Harry. And look, Charlie did not believe in laws governing speech at all. It's something that he publicly said. It's something that he privately said. It's one of the things that we held most closely. And there's no question that my friend would have completely opposed any attempts to create some sort of legal structure to punish, from a government perspective, punish speech. But it has to be clear, Charlie Kirk was not killed by speech. He was killed by an extremist who was silencing speech. And, when I hear these people, and they're so upset over the situation with Jimmy Kimmel, and by the way, this isn't the first time that we've seen a late night host this year lose their job or lose their show. I mean, quite frankly, I think that business model is just kind of falling apart. This is something where a lot of people had actually predicted this. It doesn't surprise me that ABC would be using this latest controversy to finally say, okay, it's time to pull the plug on this. It's obviously a loss leader, the same way that Colbert has been a loss leader. And look, all these people on the left that are so up in arms saying, oh, well, we think Jimmy Kimmel's speech is being silenced. These were the same people who were celebrating when Charlie Kirk was silenced for life. For life.
Well, getting into what Jimmy Kimmel actually said, it wasn't the joke, I don't think, that was the problem. He was fundamentally wrong, right? He said
Yes.
on air, and we've played the clip already, but he said on air that Charlie's killer was one of the MAGAs, one of their own. That has been demonstrably proven incorrect by everything that we've learned in the last 7 days. This isn't a free speech issue. It's not about jokes. It's about factual errors, right?
Well, I think that as well, that, when it comes down to it, this is something that obviously it wasn't a joke, and it's been perpetuated in a long line of Jimmy Kimmel's lack of jokes. Certainly wouldn't be the first time that Jimmy Kimmel hasn't been funny in a monologue. Charlie even had a tweet, I think back from 2017.
I saw that.
Say that Jimmy Kimmel isn't funny. Though I would argue that Jimmy used to be funny before he turned into this sort of corporate sellout. I actually enjoyed his old shows very much, and I think a lot of us, of a certain age who remember the sort of pre-ABC Jimmy Kimmel enjoyed him quite well, and he was very offensive and certainly would have defended those jokes. But no, this isn't about a joke. This is about lying and slandering not only half of the country, but potentially even members of his own audience, saying it was one of you. I mean, that puts a target on people's backs. That's something that it can be very, very dangerous. So I think, ABC. And from what I hear, this was really a bottom up, the affiliates in the ABC network looking at this and saying, look, it seems that you're turning against our own listeners, our own viewers, our own customers, and that's just something that we can't support.
So, I mean, not to put words in your mouth, but you clearly disagree with, the cancel culture per se. But this isn't. You don't see Jimmy Kimmel as being cancelled. You're seeing this as consequence culture. This is the consequences of his actions have a reaction, and that is market forces in its way. And also, you can't get away with saying something like that, and everything else is a sort of noise around that. Is that, I think, where you are?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, look, you look at a guy like Jimmy Kimmel who practiced cancel culture himself. And again, he practiced cancel culture in the sense that he laughed when Donald Trump was pulled off of Twitter. He laughed when other people were suspended or other people lost their speaking spots. He was a great proponent of these things. And Jimmy, lived by the sword, died by the sword. This was your culture. This is exactly what you perpetuated for all this time. So what we're doing is we are applying his own rules to he himself.
Where do you feel on Pam Bondi? I mean, what she said last week about, back in London, or here in London where I am now, but in Britain there's been a slow sort of descent into criminalising words, hate speech, for example. Pam Bondi seemed to open the door to that again, have that debate again in the United States, and said, we will come after you criminally for what you wrote. It's one thing being fired for something you say, and a boss having the right to not pay you money to do your job if he doesn't like how you represent the organisation. But when the government gets involved, that's a slippery slope, right?
Yeah, this is something, and certainly, we've even been kind of, chatting about it in the office here, even as we're, dealing with everything that we're dealing with, because these are serious questions. And I just in general, I don't like the idea of the government getting into the game of speech, getting into the game of politicizing speech or criminalizing speech when it comes to a business that being, we as conservatives have fought for decades for businesses to maintain that right of refusal. That is something that we've always fought for. Now, that being said, what I do support is when it comes to this crackdown on these Antifa groups that are perpetuating domestic terrorism, that are fanning the flames, that are funding it. When you find things that cross over that line into conspiracy to commit violence and an actual commission of violence, that's when I would want the government to get involved and say, those are the people that you need to start prosecuting. That's the money that you have to go after. So I like that the president, I think, stepped in and he sort of corrected course on that one.
Final question, Jack. I know you're a man of the faith, but should Jimmy Kimmel be allowed to repent, and how would you like to see him do that?
Should Jimmy Kimmel be allowed to repent? I mean, look, repentance is spiritual. That's something between him and God.
Publicly, though, would you like to see him apologize?
With Charlie, well, I think he should apologize to Erica. There's no question. Erica deserves an apology, and I would say it's up to her. And in terms of his old co-host, by the way, used to be Adam Carolla, and Adam Carolla, of course, is someone who has not changed his stripes. And I don't know, perhaps he and Adam could get together and do something again.
Jack, just quickly tell us what Sunday looks like. It's a remarkable lineup of speakers from the president down. Just give us a flavour of what the scenes we're going to see around the world from Arizona on Sunday.
It's going to be unlike anything that's ever been held before. It's bigger than a Super Bowl. It is going to be the most secure event in the Western Hemisphere on that day. Obviously, with this many levels of the federal government, of Congress, all being in one place, as well as there's so many other dignitaries and people who have reached out, just complete outpouring of support. So the logistics, as you can imagine, between the amount of people, the security, Secret Service, as well as the media who all are going to be there. We've even been fielding questions and concerns from online streamers saying that they're not sure if they'll be able to handle the bandwidth because pardon the phrase, but break the internet in terms of streaming numbers. That being said, though, Harry, I hate every second of this. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be doing this. New followers and big numbers, I'd trade it all just to see Charlie walk through the door one more time.
I don't doubt that for a second. Jack, thank you for coming, and good to catch up with you finally, and come and see us again in happier circumstances. But best of luck for Sunday. Jack Posobiec there. Coming up after this, Katie Lamb, Tory MP, rising star, who tears into culture, commerce, free speech, you name it, she's got an opinion on it. We'll ask her, does Britain have the guts to protect dissent, or are laws being quietly used to shut people up? Katie Lamb up next, don't go away. Welcome back to Harry Cole Saves the West. Joining me now is Katie Lamb, Tory MP for a wonderful part of the world of Kent. One of the most outspoken voices of Westminster today. She's taken on grooming gangs, she's warned against creeping blasphemy laws, she's demanded tougher action to defend free speech. Tonight we're going to get into all of that. Now, Katie, you hit the headlines with an incredible Commons appearance about the grooming gangs scandal. And I've got a question for you. Why has the British state as a whole been so reluctant to confront the truth about British Pakistani rape gangs?
There's lots of different parts to it, but a huge part of it is that they didn't want to be accused of being racist. They didn't want to be called racist, they didn't want to be seen as racist. And we know that for a fact. This is not a conspiracy or a hypothesis. Various police forces around the country, there is documented evidence that they knew that there were these gangs waiting for girls outside schools, waiting for these girls outside children's homes, and they didn't want to investigate any further because they knew that the victims were white. They knew that the perpetrators were Pakistani Muslim and Muslim origin men. Pakistani and Pakistani origin Muslim men.
Yes.
And they didn't want to know.
When children are abused, officials cover it up, be it politicians, police, and maybe we'll find out even in government, all for the sacred, fear of community tensions. That's state-enabled Islamophobia in reverse, right? They don't want to upset a particular religious group. So what do we do? How did they get there?
The price that, I was going to say but really the price that these children have had to pay for all of these institutions who didn't have the courage to tell the truth, even if somebody might say you're a racist or you're an Islamophobe, is an unthinkable price.
Do you think without Elon Musk's, one of his many Twitter X sort of meltdowns was about this over last Christmas? This issue has been bubbling under the surface in Britain for decades. There's never been a moment of national reckoning where suddenly everyone just went, what the hell? Did it take an outsider, an American or, someone with a big platform to just go, hang on, sorry, what is going on? Or would we have bubbled? What would have happened without Elon? Would we still not be, still be creeping around this issue?
I think we would definitely have got there in the end. There was a lot of good work actually done under Suella Braverman in the last government to try to bring some light to this. She was disciplined by IPSO, by the press regulator, for trying to do that.
An old friend of mine.
I'm sure.
Our American friends will not realise that there is actually a government, well, not quite government, but a Quango-backed regulator of the free press. Goodbye First Amendment. If you like if you write something someone doesn't like, they can complain, and then it goes to a tribunal and a patent. I don't feel like I have to explain that one.
It is a remarkable, terrible process. But she was disciplined for that at the time. But
she was
still,
right.
She was completely right. Went ahead, founded the Grooming Gangs Task Force, which has now contributed to over 1,000 arrests. So there were some things that were happening. But what you say is completely true. We've never had a moment of reckoning as a nation about what I think is the greatest state failure of Britain ever, of the British government complex ever, to say this is unthinkably appalling what's happened to these children.
The government, Labour government, they promised to invest in a national inquiry, then they didn't, and then they did, and now it's still up and running. Fill us in on exactly where we are on that. And do you really think, and we've seen how these inquiries go, they last for decades, they cost millions and millions of pounds, and you get a sort of pile of paper at the end of it like that with no logical conclusions. Surely what the British people want to see is people banged up because of this, people who cover this up in jail. How likely is that ever to be?
Well, to answer your question first about the inquiry, so it's been announced. But what we don't know yet, the two next crucial pieces of information are what are the terms of reference going to be? So basically, what is it going to look at? And the worry is that it will just coordinate a bunch of local inquiries rather than really get to the bottom of how this could possibly have happened across the whole country. And then the second thing is who's going to lead it, because these are very serious criminals operating in gangs, you know, an organised form of crime. And whoever is going to do this is going to need to be incredibly brave to take it on. To the point about going to prison, there are so many people who are involved with this who should be in prison. And whilst I was saying earlier, you know, thousands of people have been arrested, many people have been convicted and are in prison, not one person has even been charged with the cover-up. So everybody who's been arrested and in prison has been charged for the original crimes, for rape and sexual torture.
But the secondary crimes, the cover-up, the enabling. Yeah,
nobody. For misconduct in public office, nothing. For all of the various perverting the course of justice related offences.
And telling these young women to, you know, that they were, you know, accusing them of being prostitutes, accusing them of bringing it on themselves and go away, shut up and you know, stop wearing short skirts.
10-year-olds.
It's disgusting. Yeah.
A 10-year-old cannot be a prostitute. A 10-year-old is a rape victim. And the idea that our institutions were so desperate for this problem to go away and to look away that they would convince themselves of that is appalling.
You're a Conservative, and I don't want to get too into the party politics of this, but do you suspect, do you believe, and do you have any evidence that of the theory, essentially, that this happened in vast Labour-run, mostly Labour-run communities in the north of England? The councils are up to their neck. Do you suspect there has been a dragging of the feet by Labour on this issue for fear of the political damage it could do to the government?
There are definitely victims and victim family members who say to me that they think that that's the case, that part of this is how embarrassing it might be for the broader Labour Party as an institution. What that means for individual people maybe currently in the government, I'm not sure. But there is definitely a big question that needs to be asked and answered about local officials, local police officers and local government.
Well, hopefully we will get some answers out. The other big cause you've taken up of late is Islamophobia, which I can't define it. You know, is it... the government seem to be wanting to... And again, this is going to surprise our American listeners. They want to enshrine in law a definition of how not to offend a religion. Is that correct?
Essentially, yes. So Islamophobia, to my mind, even just as a term, is, if not a paradox, certainly not what a lot of people on the left would want you to think it is. So what they're trying to do, they're kind of playing with language to make it seem like this is a form of racism. But criticising a religion, it's not about hating somebody for their sex or the colour of their skin. It's about critiquing a belief system. And if you can't do that in a free society, then you're not a free society. We
have anti-Semitism. You know, everyone kind of knows what anti-Semitism is. Why, you know, the argument on the other side is, well, why not have it for Islam?
Well, they're very different because the Jews are an ethnic group.
Yeah.
So anti-Semitism is about hatred of Jews, as I was just saying, for something that they can't control.
Yes.
You know, if you're born in the Jewish ethnic group, then there's nothing you can ever do about that. There are
a lot of Muslims will feel that they were born into their religion, and that's, you know, that's on them as well. It may not be a race or an ethnicity.
It's the distinction between belief and ethnicity. So anti-Semitism, you can be anti-Semitic towards a secular Jew, but Islamophobia is about Islam. And it's also, I think, important that the word is about Islam. We're not talking about anti-Muslim hatred. This is not about targeting people. It's about targeting the religion. And of course you should be able to target the religion.
Tories are in a minority in Parliament. You've got a massive Labour majority. This is just going to get rammed through, isn't it?
Well, there are lots of connections between the two issues that we've spoken about, between grooming gangs and Islamophobia. And one of them is, actually, when you campaign well from opposition, you can change things, you can see change. When we were first campaigning for a national inquiry on the grooming gangs, everybody said this is never going to happen. This is a total waste of time. The government will never agree to do this. In January, it's a far-right bandwagon. By June, it's government policy. So similarly, on Islamophobia...
So you need Elon Musk to weigh in on this one as well? I think he was tweeting about it the other day.
There was a public consultation which thousands of people responded to. A couple of my colleagues, Claire Coutinho, Nick Timothy, the Free Speech Union as well, encouraged people encourage people to respond to this consultation, and they did. And the government said all of these responses of normal people were spam, and now they've delayed the whole project because it's embarrassed them. So there are ways that you can affect this, but I should also say the connection between the two is the Islamophobia definition that the government's looking to introduce is very closely related to an existing one that was put together by the All-Party Parliamentary Group on British Muslims. And that report, which was published in 2018, says grooming gangs, talking about grooming gangs as Muslim perpetrators is a form of Islamophobia.
Yeah.
So it's explicitly trying to cover up the truth.
Links the two.
Yeah.
Katie, we're running out of time, I'm afraid. We've got an absolutely packed show. But before you go, I've been back in London for a few days now, and every single conservative-minded person I've met seems to be backing reform. Danny Kruger...
Well, not every
you're the first one. Danny
Kruger,
a dear colleague of yours, a friend of yours, defected to reform just the other day. Tory party's in deep decline, isn't it?
Well, the Tory party, there's no question, is in a really tough
Danny
place.
says it's dead.
I think I like Danny a lot. You're right to say he's a friend of mine. I totally disagree with him about this. But last year, the government suffered a worse electoral defeat than, as was the Conservative Party, suffered a worse electoral defeat than any government ever. Rebuilding our trust with the public is going to take time. It's
surely
not easy.
But reform 30% ahead in the polls is running out. You haven't got that much time.
No, we haven't got that much time, but it's also rightly going to take the public a bit of time to forgive us, and they're going to need to see that we've changed and that we're consistent in that change.
People call you a rising star, young, articulate campaigner. Kemi Badenoch goes the way of many other opposition leaders have done in the past. You fancy the job?
I think I have been in Parliament for something like 10 or 15
that's not
minutes.
A denial.
I think it's far too,
you heard it here first.
To think about it.
Not a denial. Would you like to one day be the Prime Minister?
Well, all I would really like to do one day is fix the country. I believe we live in the greatest country in the world, and that it's having a really tough time, and it doesn't have to be this way.
Sound like a politician, because you are. But Katie Lamb, thank you for coming. You heard it here first. Look at that. That is what we call in the trade, not a denial. Coming up on the break, we're going to get into another chilling story. Deborah Anderson, American mother, Trump supporter who's battling cancer, who tells us about the British police who knocked on her door. Her supposed crime? Supporting MAGA. We'll hear from Deborah in a moment. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Harry Cole Saves the West. Now, free speech isn't just for the rich and famous, it's on people's doors. Deborah Anderson, an American citizen, mother of two, and a cancer patient, was told by Thames Valley Police to apologise for her tweets or face consequences. Let's watch this moment right now.
You can come in, but you better have a damn good reason for being here. I'm a member of the Free Speech Union, and I'm an American citizen. I'll have Elon Musk on you so quick your feet won't touch.
Something that we believe you've written on Facebook has upset someone.
You're here because somebody got upset. Is it against the law? Am I being arrested?
You're not being arrested.
Then what are you doing here?
My plan was, if you were admitting that it was you who wrote the comment, you could just make an apology to the person.
I'm not apologizing to anybody, I can tell you that.
Alternative would be...
Now, I mean, shocking scenes there of the British state in action. Now, Deborah joined me earlier to share her story. Look, I've had a look at some of the things you've posted online. They seem, you're obviously politically engaged. You're obviously a supporter of President Trump. You follow politics. You comment on politics. Do you ever feel like you crossed the line at any point online, or do you just feel, is there anything you think it could possibly be that might have, crossed that line?
I feel that it's more... you feel that it's more likely over here than it would be in America.
Yeah.
And I think it's more the uncertainty over here because it all seems kind of vague, what they decide to pull you up on and what they decide to...
Very vague, yes.
Yeah, that's really what it is, because there's nothing clear cut where you can say, okay, I know I can't say that. It's not like that. It's just vague. And it's almost like...
Go on, carry on, sorry.
Yeah, it's almost like if they're not busy that day, then they'll go see if they can, I don't know.
Find some door to knock on.
That's it. It's like, oh, you're having a slow day, so yeah, I'll just go knock on a door, you know. That's what I got. That was the impression.
What's your a couple of things? What's your message to your fellow American citizens in Britain and your American friends and family back home about how this makes you feel about Britain and how careful people we need to be?
To be honest, most people are very, very aware of what's going on in the UK and are actually really scared for me, you know, because they know I'm political and I like to, you know, mouth off. And I mean, I don't say anything that would cross lines, but, you know, I've got opinions. Of course I do. But you know, like people like my mom and various people back home are like, oh, be careful, you know, because everybody's kind of scared. Everybody's aware of what's going on over here and they know it's very different from what we're used to back home.
Do you feel like you have to self-censor it yourself in this country?
Very much, very much. And I think, I'll be honest with you, I think that's what these visits are about. I think they're about getting us to self-censor. I think it's a bullying tactic to just get us to go, oh, gee, should I or shouldn't I? I won't, sort of thing. But they picked the wrong old woman for that.
Very good, very good. And what's your message to President Trump? He's just left Britain, but he did sort of raise the issue of free speech. Do you think the president should do more to stand up for American citizens?
That's a tricky one. I know a lot of people would like him to, and other people would like him to butt out. I don't have the answers to these things in the world. I know that, you know, look, Starmer had brought in a bunch of people to campaign for Kamala Harris.
Yes. The president,
you know what I mean?
The president didn't like that.
No, and so it's not as though they've never done it to us, you know, getting involved or overstepping bounds. But I really don't know how this thing should be handled, you know, because ultimately Britain is Britain and America is America. And I love both countries equally.
So do I. But what's your message to Keir Starmer then? What's your message to the British government as an American citizen who's felt the tough end of the British state for seemingly no reason at all other than being, as you put it so succinctly, a bit mouthy on the internet? What's your message to the British government?
Well, I hadn't really thought this one through, but I would say that the British people are going to fight. You know, they're not afraid to fight. They've been quiet all this time. They've been polite. They've been well behaved. But I think they're going to push things too far. I think people are starting to get angry. And, you know, who knows what could happen? I have no idea myself. But I think that they are actually not making any friends for themselves. I think people are people are really waking up, whereas they hadn't before. And I think that more and more people are realizing what's happening. And I think that's not going to be good for Starmer.
Now, following Deborah's knock on the door from the cops, she turned to an organisation called the Free Speech Union, and its founder, Lord Young, Toby Young, author, provocateur, man about town, many titles for you. Toby Young, welcome to the... say Harry Cole saves the West, nearly said something else then. You took up Deborah's case. You've taken up dozens of these cases across the land. Fill us in about why you felt the need to start the Free Speech Union and what's happened in those months since you have.
Well, I originally set it up because I thought that free speech was under assault in Britain.
Clearly is.
But I naively thought, Harry, when I set it up 5 years ago, that things were at a very low ebb. Free speech had never been in such peril since the Second World War, but it wasn't going to get any worse. We'd reached rock bottom, I thought. And then immediately we had the pandemic. About a month after I set it up, suddenly people started getting cancelled for challenging the government's pandemic response, the lockdowns, the vaccine mandates. Then we had the imbroglio over George Floyd's death. Suddenly, if you said Britain wasn't the most racist country in the world, you could get cancelled. I felt like a guy falling, I often feel like this, falling through a burning building. And every time my feet touch the bottom and I finally think I've reached solid ground, the floor gives way again and like, ah! It feels a bit like that. The state of free speech in this country has never been in a poorer state. I mean, we're at risk of becoming the North Korea of the North Sea. And Deborah's case is just the very latest example. But, you know, there was an article in the Times a few months ago saying that the police are arresting over 12,000 people a year for supposedly saying offensive things online.
30 words.
That's over 30 a day.
That's an astonishing fact. When I'm in America, I've moved to America, people hear my accent, the first thing they say to me is, what the hell is going on in Britain? You were seeing this on the front line. I try to defend my country. I'm a patriot. I love this country, but I also say I can also see it going wrong. But they're making it harder and harder and harder to do it. Is it as bad as people say? Or are we actually at a bit of a turning point now where people are seeing these stories, seeing these non-crime hate incidents, the statistics of tens of thousands of people being, you know, sort of sanctioned by the state for their words, and, as Deborah said in that sort of powerful ending, saying, hang on, enough, you're pushing us too far. Are you seeing evidence of that?
Yeah, I think we're seeing evidence in the number of people that are joining the Free Speech Union. So at the time of the general election last year, we had 14,000 members.
Right.
And since then, we've grown to 35,500 members. 500 people joined today.
Off the back of Deborah's story.
Of what happened to Deborah. I think we are reaching a turning point. Even when Graham Linehan, the comedy writer...
Who was sitting in your seat, right where you were, right last night.
When he was arrested by 5 armed police officers when he arrived at Heathrow, I think that really brought home to people who've been questioning whether free speech is in crisis in the UK. Wake up, smell the coffee. We've got a problem here. And I think even Keir Starmer was unwilling to defend what the police did. Then 3 senior police officers, including the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, wrote to the Home Secretary and said, we do have a problem. They blamed it on poor guidance, laws tying their hands, absence of discretion. I mean, that wasn't terribly persuasive. But the fact that they are saying to the Home Secretary, we need some clearer guidance here. The police don't have a clue about what they should be investigating.
Who do you blame on them? The police obviously pass the buck at every opportunity they possibly can. They're the coppers, right? But politicians do have a responsibility here. Keir Starmer flanked Donald Trump earlier and was asked about free speech, and he said, we've had free speech in this country for a long time and we'll have it for a long time going forward. I
was reminded of, it felt like Joseph Stalin boasting that the Soviet Union was the most democratic country in the world, you know, in the 1950s. I mean, he's living in a parallel universe. And I was sorry that Trump didn't kind of actually speak up.
Well, he was on good behaviour.
He didn't want to kind of ruin the vibe. Yeah, when Keir Starmer kind of sticks his head in the sand and says, we have a proud tradition of free speech in this country. It's in rude good health. I won't let it decline on my watch. I mean, you know,
just
watch the video. There's a video like this practically every day.
What laws do you believe needs to change? What needs tightened up? What needs rewording? What needs repealing? How do we get ourselves out of this slippery slope to, as you say, authoritarianism? And what was it? Great turn of phrase, North Korea on the North Sea.
North Korea on the North Sea. Well,
I might steal that. Can I have that?
You can have that. Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the Conservative Party, has asked me, she's tasked me with heading up a policy commission reviewing the laws regulating our free speech. So I'm thinking about that very question.
People are on the streets. People are taking to the... people are raising flags, spraying roundabouts, marching through London, and you're twiddling your thumbs with a commission.
Well, you've got to start somewhere, Harry. I think reforming our laws, deciding which laws to repeal, which laws need amending, that's important. I mean, it's not something that can be achieved overnight, particularly under this government. But I think the fundamental guiding principle has to be, we need something like the First Amendment in this country. We need speech to be
British
protected.
Bill of Rights.
A British Bill of Rights that enshrines the First Amendment. You can't be prosecuted for something you've said, whether in person or online, unless you're intending to incite violence or actually inciting violence. That should be the standard. A clear standard for the police, a clear standard for everybody. Anything that falls below that threshold shouldn't be the state's business.
Tell me about the Free Speech Union. So it's what, £5 a month, is it, to join?
It's £30 a year.
£30 a year.
Silver concession membership. Full membership is £60 a year. If you get into trouble,
like
if the police come knocking at your door, it'll be the best money you've ever spent.
Like a trade union for people who like to give it out.
We call it woke insurance.
Woke insurance. Excellent. Where can I sign up for my woke insurance?
You go to freespeechunion.org/join. And we've got the offers there. If you're watching this in America, we've got a special offer for Americans for only $40. If you're thinking of coming to the UK, you might well get intercepted by armed police officers at Heathrow. You'll want us in your corner.
I'm going to ask you a question. Talking of American members, would you defend Jimmy Kimmel then? Do you think he's being cancelled for what he said about Charlie Kirk? What's the difference between cancel? Do you do cancellation first, or do you do consequence insurance as well?
I was disappointed, actually, by what happened to Jimmy Kimmel. I'm constantly trying to persuade people on my side in the culture war, tempting though it is, when the boot's on the other foot, to give the left, who've been attacking and cancelling us for years, a good kicking. We have to resist. We have to take the high ground. We have to defend free speech. And I don't think Charlie Kirk would have wanted Jimmy Kimmel to be cancelled, regardless of how insensitive and inappropriate his reaction to Charlie Kirk's assassination was.
Toby Young, stay there, because we're going to bring in our all-star panel for this evening. Scarlett Maguire, poster to the stars of Merlin Strategy. Niall Gardner, who I've spoken to you all week on television, on other networks, but lovely to see you here. Niall Gardner from the Heritage Foundation. It's the Margaret Thatcher
Centre for Freedom.
Centre for Freedom, of course. How could I forget? Guys, the state visit has wrapped. Donald Trump is in the air. He's, wheels up. It couldn't have really gone better for Donald Trump, for Keir Starmer. The expectation that there was going to be this great dust-up at the press conference didn't happen. There were a few scratches, there were some barbs, but there was no dust-up. Niall Gardner, how do you think Donald Trump, you know the fella, how do you think he's feeling there as he's sipping his Diet Coke and eating his McDonald's on Air Force One right now?
Well, I think that President Trump will feel that this has been a very successful state visit. I think he was very pleased, especially with the first day was absolutely brilliant.
The shock and awe, the pomp, the circumstance.
Yeah, it was magnificent. It was Great Britain at its very, very best. And a clear recognition of President Trump's role as the leader of the free world. And I don't think it could have gone in any way better. The second day was also very good for President Trump. As you pointed out, there was no direct confrontation, of course, with Keir Starmer, but behind the scenes, certainly there are clear ideological and policy differences. And we saw a bit of that in terms of the clash over the issue of the recognition of a Palestinian state, for example. And Keir Starmer's response on the free speech question just sounded utterly ridiculous. And I don't think anyone in Washington believed what Keir Starmer was actually saying.
I have to say, he looked a little bit green around the gills as he came out onto that podium. Did you reckon he got a hairdryer treatment in private rather than public? Because, Donald Trump is acutely aware, mainly because journalists keep telling him about some of these cases that Toby's organisation raises. Graham Linehan, for example, he has publicly said that free speech needs to be protected, and he's very concerned about what's going on in Britain. Do you think he gave Keir Starmer a stern talking to behind the scenes?
I think it's quite possible it was raised behind the scenes. I believe we are going to see far stronger messaging coming from the United States on the free speech issue post-state visit.
What are you hearing?
Well, my understanding is that this issue is going to be a key priority for the United States moving forward in terms of US-UK relations, as it should be. And it's an issue of a major concern for the broader conservative movement in the US. And I expect it's going to be front and centre in terms of future discussions post-day visit. Intriguing.
Sounds like you know more than you're letting on there. Scarlett Maguire. Protesters were pretty flat this time. There weren't the tens of thousands that were promised. How has it landed, would you say, with a British audience, both the voting public and business? I think you've got some polling that shows business pretty happy with their billions of investment.
Yeah, absolutely. So zooming out a little, you obviously don't need a pollster here to tell you that
but it
Keir
helps.
Starmer, that always helps. You don't need a pollster here to tell you that Keir Starmer's had quite a torrid year, and especially quite a bad few weeks. And so I think he was in desperate need of some good news. And actually, as you say, looks like this went off pretty well. You're right as well about the protests. It feels like the temperature has been taken down since the last time 8 years ago. And you see that in numbers as well. So Trump is distinctly unpopular with the UK public. He was before as well. He's less unpopular than he was. But something that you're hearing more in both the qualitative data and focus groups, but also in the quantitative data, is that people say, well, I might not like the man, but I like that he gets things done.
Yeah.
And I think that is a crucial difference as well when it comes to people's just general feelings about Trump and what it is that he's doing across the pond, even if they still don't like him.
Trump 47 versus Trump 45 is, it's move fast, it's break things, it's planned, it's right, you can just do stuff. Is there much of a crossover in the numbers of people that are looking to Nigel Farage, obviously reformer in the nudging 30, Labour, as you say, deeply unpopular in this country, a movement that looks a little bit like the early sort of Tea Party into MAGA sort of uprisings of people taking to the streets, people saying enough is enough. How much crossover in the data is there between what happened, how we got Donald Trump elected twice, and how possibly Nigel Farage is knocking the door of number 10?
It's a fantastic question. We've actually just partnered with a very good US firm called Echelon Insights, run by Patrick Ruffini.
Everyone Everyone's getting their tips in today, aren't they?
We did some crossover research, which was fascinating because, again, it won't surprise you to know that people voting for reform in this country are the ones that are more likely to think that the country's broken and that it needs radical action to fix it. That, indeed, I'm sure, is why Reform's own slogan is Britain is broken, which they, I'm sure, will continue to make good progress with because it matches a lot of the public mood. So you're right. The more desperate you are with the state of the country, the more likely you are to be fed up with the two mainstream parties and want to try something else. That is very similar to how things were in the United States. However, the United States is much more polarised, so Democrats also feel like that when Republicans are in. It's a little bit more different because of the political polarisation and bifurcation that happens in America. But in the UK, that sense that the country's not working very well, absolutely, that's what's driving Nigel Farage.
I'm going to finish on free speech with a question for each of you. Niall, how bad is it for Britain's reputation in Washington and around the world? These incidents we're seeing, you know, Deborah having her collar felt by the cops. Is it poisoning the special relationship you said, or is it a sort of niche issue that people are, those who are interested in it, but actually no one really cares?
I think it's far bigger than a niche issue, and it's received huge publicity in the United States. And almost every day there's a new story of someone being arrested for their social media commentary in Britain. It's a very bad look for the UK, after all, the original home of free speech. And I do believe that millions of Americans are very, very concerned about it. I know the White House is very concerned about it. And I think it's seriously damaging, actually, to Britain's image, not only in America, but all over the world.
Scarlett, is it a niche issue in the polls in Britain? Are people animated about this? We hear a lot of noise about it, but is it going to... Crucially, is it going to move the dial?
I don't think it will move the dial, but I do think there is a sense that more and more in focus groups you're hearing other people voice these concerns and say, I feel like that too. Now, I don't think that is going to move the dial on votes. It ranks very low in terms of salience and priorities. But again, it just feeds into that wider sense that the country's not working in the citizens' interest. And so that builds in, again, it plays into Nigel Farage's hand.
So how are you going to get your First Amendment then if the voting public aren't as angry about these things as you are, despite all of these thousands of cases? How are you going to change the law?
Well, I think Deborah was right that people are becoming more and more angry about this. You can push the British people so far before they finally snap. But I hope that in a future US-UK trade deal, there'll be a preamble committing both sides to upholding the principles of the First Amendment. It won't have any legal purchase, but it might have real political meaning. So I think that's my hope. I'll say one other thing, Harry. We do get a lot of criticism from the Americans. What's happening to your country? And they depict it as a kind of post-apocalyptic kind of zombie horror movie, full of people robbing you wherever you go. But actually, what's happening here with the police becoming the kind of, paramilitary wing of Antifa, that could easily have happened in America had Kamala Harris won the presidential election. It's almost there, but for the grace of God, go you. And I think one of the reasons the MAGA lot are so keen to help us is because they think, well, we've saved America. This is what America might have become had
it does feel to me like people.
Now we have to save you.
No, you're nodding there, and you hear that same. You hear it as same as me. People saying a lesson to be learned.
I think Kamala Harris would have implemented the same kinds of policies that we see under Keir Starmer. She would have been dictatorial, authoritarian, and she would have gone after Conservatives, basically.
Well, that's why we're here to save the West. Niall Gardner, Scarlett Maguire, Toby Young. Keep doing it. All power to your elbow on the free speech stuff. Guys, see you back in DC now. Possibly see you in DC. Scarlett, thank you for joining us here on Harry Cole Saves the West. That was our episode. We will be back next week, but in the meantime, you can subscribe on YouTube. Harry Cole Saves the West, where you'll see all of the interviews all over again and lots more. Good night.